What's up, guys? Welcome to Pit Therapy Podcast. We're here with Trevor, Josh, and Kyle. We're going to chat about scary kids today. Scaring kids, scaring kids. But before we get into that, Kyle, you hit up Drain. How was that?
I know that this is like the big news right now on a lot of the online and stuff. But if you guys can get out to this tour, it's amazing. So it was Drain, Drug Church, Magnitude, Gel, and Restraining Order. So it was a pretty solid lineup. I'd never seen a lot of these bands, but it was awesome. It was a good group of kids out there. A lot of older guys, a lot of really hardcore kids to show up for like Magnitude and Drain and stuff, but a good mix of like punk kids to go see Restraining Order and Gel. But do you guys know a lot of those bands?
Yeah. I've seen Drain a few times. They actually just came through here on the same tour. It was pretty cool because they played behind this shoe company called Pfizer Clothing, I guess you could say, but it was built on like scaffolding. And so it was all outdoor, way out of the norm. It wasn't in a typical venue and like ran outside. They had Post Malone there and stuff. So it was pretty popping, It was a pretty good time.
Yeah.
Posty representing a bootleg Drain t-shirt.
Yeah. With his boat hat.
Yeah.
Dude, I saw another clip of him at the Drain show where he was talking about how like he messed his knee up, but he's ready to start getting back in the pit. So I'm ready to see those clips, dude, of Post Malone thrown down.
It's pretty dope that he's in our scene and he's representing like he is. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked on that. And you had mentioned while we were kind of chatting that Drug Church, you said, was a solid band live.
That's it. Honestly, one of the better performances I've seen. And what was cool is, we're getting older, right? And Drug Church is on that kind of same level of us age-wise, but it was really cool to see like how engaging he was for like the old heads that were out at that show and a lot of the younger kids. So he had one part where he kind of calmed the crowd down and told people like, this song, if you've never stage dived before, I want you up here and I want the old guys catching them, So it was just really cool to like, because it's a really cool moment in the scene right now, I think, where we have a good mix of old heads and young kids going out. And I'm glad that bands can support that and bring it together, because it was really cool to see some of these young, 15, 16-year-old kids getting rowdy for a show like that.
That's pretty sick. I mean, when we were coming up, we didn't have old guys with us. Very rarely was there anyone over 25 at the concerts we were at, kind of thing. So, yeah. And when they were, there was usually problems that followed, kind of thing. Right. So, but no, that's sick. So
the venue this was at, though, it was a pretty cool venue. The stage was way high, and like, man, I saw some kids just bomb it, and I'm sure kids walked out of there pretty hurt. The stage was high, and like, it wasn't as packed as I think I would have liked it, but lots of stage diving was pretty cool. I will say about this venue, though, we talked a little bit before, but it's the cleanest bathroom I've ever been in for a concert venue. They had a guy in the bathroom that was like handing out towels to people and wiping up after, and there was cologne in there, and they had like mints, and I'm sitting here like, dude, I'm at a hardcore show. I'm not gonna like tip you. I don't have cash on me, This is the cleanest bathroom I've ever been in. It was weird. It was weird to be at a hardcore show and see that type of bathroom. Yeah, the funny part too was like, so I stayed in the back for like Restraining Order and Gel. But when Magnitude played, I pushed my way up, right? And I'm getting ready to go in the pit, and I'm filming it. And they're incredible live too. I don't know if you guys listen to a lot of Magnitude. Their album's really cool, but to see them live was like on a whole nother level. But I'm walking up to the pit and I'm getting ready to go in, and I see this big dude. He's probably 6'4", 6'5", like big guy in overalls. Like I know it's Texas, but it's like Farmer John, dude, came out and was ready to throw down. And I didn't know what to think about it. And so I asked you guys, are you more or less scared to get crowd killed by a guy in overalls?
Depends. The overalls have been a lot more popular in the last couple of years, and I can't say much because I actually have two pair. And I've definitely been to shows in both of them. I actually went to shows in Scrubs once. That was real fun.
Dude, I've not seen overalls at a show. I was dying though.
The show, dude.
Yeah, but I was just sitting there thinking, like, man, I'm not about to get windmilled by a guy in overalls. And it's like the whole time I'm thinking, like, old McDonald did have a farm, and he's ready to throw down. You know,
you're just another hay bale to him, man.
Exactly.
Oh man,
no, Magnitude's fun, man. Even just watching live videos, they've played through here. They actually came to Kilby Court,
Nice.
the venue with no stage, but they're really fun to sing along and get up and, like I say, it's not. I don't know if you necessarily call it stage diving there, but you're just like crowd walking or crawling, holding onto the roof.
No, I mean, I like their album. It sounds like they're going to have a new album here in the next little bit. Is what they were talking about. But I mean, the album they have now is pretty dope. But seeing them live is like on a whole nother level, and that's the same with Drain too. I don't know that I can remember a lot of bands that play with as much energy as they did. So
yeah, Magnitude definitely reminds me of what Have Heart left off at.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I'm totally okay with.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Well, I had this was kind of in the news earlier this week, and it was something I wanted to get your guys' opinion on. Talking with Rick Rubin, Trent Reznor, 9 Inch Nails, kind of came out and said he's not interested in touring anymore. And reading through the article, I didn't listen to the podcast, but reading through the article, it said that he quoted that the importance of music, or the lack of importance of music in today's world, from his perspectives, is a little defeating. And then summarized that basically, in the past, when he had free time, it was music. He was creating music. He was listening to music. He was doing music and stuff like that. And he said, a lot of that's changed just because of family dynamic. He has kids now. He wants to be there for his kids and things like that. But it's just background noise to him often these days. And he put out there that actually writing a song, he says, the hardest part is the songwriting piece of it, and actually putting something that has truth to it or a reason to exist to it, other than just putting out music. I wanted to ask you guys, because I've felt like this recently. We've talked about how it just feels like there's so much these days, especially some of these older bands, the ones that are coming back. And we'll talk about this with Scary Kids specifically, which is why I thought this was interesting. But do you feel like they have the same passion for it? Or do you feel like music is what they have to do now? Another band that comes to mind is The Devil Wears Prada for me. It just feels like it's something that they're just doing at this point in time. But what do you guys think?
That's, it's hard on that one, because 9 Inch Nails has been around since what? Late 90s, early 90s?
Yeah.
I mean, that's 30 years of making music and touring. And I think just like any profession, any passion, you probably maybe grow out of it or change, or, I could see where he's coming from. You've been doing it long enough, and it's like, how much more do you have to say? I get where he's coming from, but at the same time, I also think that a lot of this music is in a really cool spot right now, because there's a lot going on in the world, and I feel like the best music comes when there's crappy things happening in the world, and it's a good time for that, right? I don't know. I get where he's coming from, but I also don't know that applies across the board, because I think there's a lot of really cool young bands that are making waves, that have a lot to say.
And my thought behind it wasn't necessarily, because I agree with you, right? 30 years in this, and obviously he's bound to wind down, right? But I thought the interesting thing that he said was the passion just to listen to music in his spare time had kind of gone away. And we've talked about this before. I feel like I lost that for a long time. There was a long period there where previously I would be looking up bands, finding new stuff, listening to new albums, things like that. And I stopped doing that for a long time. I started listening to podcasts. It wasn't until we started talking about doing things like this that I really got back into music heavily.
I've got 3 thoughts. I think your priorities change, right? You're not waking up going to see your favorite tour at the end of the day, right?
He's got a family now, right?
I got to get
5
up.
kids.
I got to make money. I got to take care of my family. That's just all pushed to the wayside. And I don't think it necessarily just has to be music, but I think you just don't have that time for yourself anymore that you used to. And so I think, not purposely, but I think just as life goes on, it becomes second behind. It does become that background noise. I also think, with Nine Inch Nails, when you look at the era of them, it was the same time with like Limp Bizkit, No Doubt, Korn, all those bands, came around in a time where like the popular thing was to be rebellious. I mean, I don't know anybody that did not listen to those bands more than just to, piss their parents off. But that was like the thing to do, right? I mean, you could watch that documentary on Woodstock 99. You know what I mean? And there's another article, the Guitars from Most Precious Blood. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them at all, but the interview was in like, I think 2017. They came out and the interview was asking them what, are bands going to come back and start playing again? Like these old bands are going to see tons of reunions. And he made a really good point. He was like, no, like we might play old songs, he's like, but the problem is like the best and worst thing social media's ever done is nobody can stay on one subject for longer than a week. So something happens. Back then, you learned what happened on the news from your parents when they read the paper, which you didn't, or it was on 6:00 news at night and you learned from your parents. And so bands had, months and months and months to write about it, something you were still mad about 4 months later. Well, now a subject comes up, the subject's changed in a week. And I don't think bands can really keep up on something that's really meaningful. I mean, in a lot of ways, social media has been really good for music and just social in general. But I think in a lot of ways too, they talk about that dopamine release, you always need change.
Yeah. See, so my counterpoint to that though, is I think people are getting angsty enough again that I think the rawness and the realness of this kind of music is coming back. Looking at some of these like older bands that we used to listen to, looking at the lineup of Furnace Fest this year, how many of those bands are on hiatus or done playing that are coming back playing reunion shores? I mean, A Plea for Purging hasn't been playing in years, right? And they're going to come back and play. So I think, Nine Inch Nails has been pretty consistent throughout the years. It's probably just time for him to take a break. I don't know that he'll be done with music, but if it's, anything like what's been happening now, bands aren't touring as much. It's not taking up as much of their life. Who's to say that in 5 years, Nine Inch Nails doesn't come do just a festival for a weekend? Mm-hmm. That's what I think a lot of this is turning into, especially for these older bands that have been playing for 15 years, right? 20 years. So
I think it's a lot easier, a family of 5 to, we'll just make a 3-day festival out of it. We'll do it here instead of trying to tour for 4 months, 6 months, 8 months out of the year.
For sure. No, all good points. I thought it was an interesting comment, and I just thought that I liked what you guys said about all of it, but I thought it was really applicable because we have seen so many, like you said, on Furnace Fest and stuff like that, bands coming back and things like that. So are they coming back because they have a passion for it, or are they coming back because of another reason, right? Like that's my whole question behind it. And I hope it's because of a passion, right? I mean, how sick would it be to get a new Plea for Purging album?
For sure.
That was like legit.
I think if you think it's money, though, these guys aren't making money.
I don't necessarily know if it's money, but he hit on social media, and I want to talk about social media at some point, because some of these bands with their music videos and the stuff that they did when they first came out, that 2005, 2007 time, I feel like they would have blown up. You know what I mean? It would have been a whole different industry if they could have made the kind of money they made on YouTube back then. Yeah. So it'd be really interesting.
That would be an interesting thing to look into, is like money comparison to what bands make now because of social media presence instead of just playing tours and stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'd be super curious, like a Falling in Reverse, right? They've got just a huge social media presence because of Ronnie and the craziness that he brings and the stuff that he says. Mm-hmm. So it's like they sell out shows, right? They pack the house and people like to go with them. They've done it right in this era of social media. Our Last Night has done it right in this era of social media, So there's a few bands who have been able to capitalize on it. And it'd be interesting, had they known, how many more of these bands could have done that. I think Scary Kids is actually a really good example of that, because we'll talk about their music videos. Diving straight in, right? So they got 4 albums. They have the After Dark EP. They have The City Sleeps in Flame, the self-titled, and Out of Light being their most recent. They then have the one-off single, remembering their vocalist who passed away in 2014, and they released in 2019, I think is what that was. So I know you guys have dug into kind of producers, history, everything along those lines. So let's start with you, Josh. Kind of I know you had some thoughts on the producers and stuff like that, starting with the After Dark and the City Sleeps in Flames album.
When I was doing the research on this, I was just kind of laughing because the roster that this producer has done is unreal. So he was in Battery.
Yep.
Battery, and it's funny because like they're like old skate punk, hardcore music, like in the very 90s. I think he was in it from like 1990 to 98.
Josh was telling me when he was coming in that back when he was looking with his old band for a producer, this was actually a guy that they considered, that they were looking at.
So his name's Brian McTernan. This isn't the whole list, but just other projects that he's produced: Snapcase, Punk Goes Pop, the first 3 Thrice albums, Darkest Hour, Converge, From Autumn to Ashes, Circus Survive, Bane, Census Fail, Gwen Stacy, Amorosa, Set Your Goals, Turnstile. Just just reading through that roster, and I'm like, this, the variety is huge, and so are the years of everything that he's done.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you dug much into what he's doing now, but he's the front man for Be Well.
Yeah.
And they were just on tour with Newfound Glory and 4 Year Strong, right? That was last year, I think that tour was.
Yeah, it was the Sticks and Stones tour.
The 20-year.
Be Well is sick if you guys haven't listened to him. So
well, it's funny, like I was actually talking to a buddy of mine about that show, and he was like, "Oh, Be Well played. That's the Battery singer's in." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I've never put 2 and 2 together."
Yeah. Well, they've also got some guys from Bane, Converge, and Only Crime are part of Be Well. So that's like that's a stacked lineup for that band. So
it's super band.
It's unfortunate the venue that they played at when they came, it's called the Union. It's a solid venue when it's packed. When it's not packed, it echoes. So when Be Well was playing, there was no one there. It sounded just like noise. It wasn't clear. It wasn't good. It was not a good showing. And, granted, it was probably venue more than band, but it was not a good show out. I mean, there was maybe 40, 50 people there when they played until it started packing in for 4 Year, and then it packed in for Newfound, obviously.
So, I think the bottom line here is this guy's got cred.
Right.
He's been around the block. He's done a ton of different genres too. When you were reading off that list, Josh, so he's got cred. He knows what he's doing, and honestly, I think it reflects in. And he did the EP as well, or just The City Sleeps in Flames?
So with the EP was actually technically released in 2003. That was when they graduated high school, and then it was actually re-released underneath Immortal, and they re-released it in 2004. And then their first full length came out in 2005. But he did do The City Sleeps in Flames and After Dark.
Okay. Well,
and if Immortal, you listen to that list, I mean, the way that Scary Kids is set up, they've got a lot of slow parts. They've got a lot of just kind of chill music in there along with the heavy stuff. So he obviously has experience with all of that.
Yeah. Right. And looking at some of the bands on Immortal, I mean, it's kind of cool that Scary Kids would land a record label like that. So Korn was signed with them, Incubus, 30 Seconds to Mars. Mm-hmm. I mean, they had a serious lineup too, So I think it shows in that album because it's way better than it should have been for like a first LP being released,
It's funny. So like when I started kind of listening to the first album, like I thought, the first song I'd actually heard from Scary Kids was what's that popular one called?
Was it My Darkest Hour?
Yeah, My Darkest Hour.
That's what everyone should have heard.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. If anybody tells me that they were introduced to Scary Kids from anything other than My Darkest Hour, I don't believe them. I don't. That's the first song everyone heard.
But I might disagree because I'm almost positive I heard What's Up Now, but I didn't know it was Scary Kids scaring kids. Whether that was on like some weird thing on Pure Volume or somebody's iTunes they had downloaded off their parents' LimeWire, I don't know.
It was probably MySpace.
But like, it's one of those like what do they call it? The effects that you can like remember stuff, but it's not real.
The
Mandela effect.
Yeah.
I hear it and I'm like, I know I heard that, but that wasn't them, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I really enjoyed the EP. I liked that it had a lot of different vibes to it as far as intros and outros to every single song. I think the piano and stuff wasn't so bland. It had a lot of good like ideas and like experimental vibes to it. And honestly, like I think what's the most impressive to me is they graduated in 2003 with those songs recorded. Obviously, they've been produced since then. So I mean, I don't know what they actually sounded like before, but to have that much of mature writing at 18 years old, I mean, when I was 18, I was not writing that, you know,
right.
writing stuff in crayon.
That's
you
what.
know, so.
You're writing with comic books instead of. Yeah. But that's one of the things I noticed too, especially with the first two albums, is like, and I didn't appreciate it when I first got into Scary Kids because I was young. But going back and listening to it, it's like this was way deeper than I remember. You know, he's singing about some serious stuff and thinking that like he wrote a lot of that in high school. Like, man, that's a lot of maturity for an 18-year-old writing lyrics like that. So
right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Dark EP or After Dark EP. What's Up Now? Right out of the gates, right? I personally think it's probably the best song on the album, but it really does set the tone for who Scary Kids is. There's several songs like this, right? But What's Up Now, you could easily just put on What's Up Now and be like, this is the foundation of Scary Kids. Mm-hmm. It's got the synth, it's got heavy vocals, it's got the open kind of airy parts with the clean singing and stuff like that. Like What's Up Now is a legit solid Scary Kids song.
So how many bands do you think at this time, 2004, 2005, were really doing synth stuff? Because I don't think Devil Wears Prada, because there's a difference between, I feel like some of these like metalcore bands that were using like organ sounding, you know, that was really big in like metal, but like straight synth sounds, synthesizer sounds. How many people do you think were doing it then?
Yeah, I don't think a lot. I think Scary Kids was early on to this and everything. And I think a lot of that's reflected. It's weird to talk about Scary Kids now because there's so much music out there. But if you try to go back and put this into perspective of 2005, when we're first getting into Scary Kids, they were recognized by, low award shows and stuff like that as the best screamo band in the scene. They got awarded multiple times as being front runners, being top of what they were doing and stuff like that. And I think that it gets lost because there's so much now, but putting it back in 2005, they were unique. They were different. Right. And I think the synth was a huge piece of that.
Without social media, without a lot of this stuff, for some of their first tours, and I know we're going to go deeper into the tours, but some of their first tours in like 2005 and stuff, I mean, those were big lineups that they were brought on to. You know, they weren't playing these tiny, small type shows. I mean, you know, looking at like the Haste of the Day tour in 2005, like their first album's out by then, barely an EP, and they're touring with bands like that. I mean, that kind of shows, you know, the maturity and the skill that they had.
2 years out of high school.
Yeah.
Right. Early on. I know we've talked about it. After Dark, a solid release from Scary Kids. But then you hit the City Sleeps in Flames. This, in my opinion, is Scary Kids. Like, if I was to be like, if someone said, what would you listen to from Scary Kids? Listen to the City Sleeps in Flames album front to back. And that's what you should. You don't have to listen to anything else. That you can put that on repeat and we'll call it good with Scary Kids. But just the way that it opens, the actual song, The City Sleeps in Flame, is amazing. Yeah. Right? The lyrics in that, the empire will fall like we planned on, can't find a way to live through this life, screaming at the end kind of thing. Just legit.
Yeah.
Super solid.
It was sick seeing them live, right? Back in 2005 and them opening with that because it hit hard, you know, and it had good build up and 100%. It's one of the best intros to an album.
I think it's cool because you know the way that it's written, coming from like I guess a musician standpoint, is there's so much you can do with the crowd, and just like the drums coming in, you know, you can come out and have everybody start clapping their hands, and like I say, like the vocals are so easy to understand and they're catchy. I think that was one of the hardest parts trying to be popular in that era was not only just sounding good, but like making your lyrics stick. And it didn't matter if they were like good lyrics, bad lyrics. You just needed them to stick to where it was stuck in your brain. You're like, I hate it. And then all of a sudden you're like, dude, this is sick. Like,
and on that song, the Empire has fallen like they planned on. Can we even last through the night? When that hit, we were all pushing to the front. We were all trying to grab, it was just so solid. So just legit.
Just as a funny factoid that I learned about when I was around this time when they were first starting out and stuff, did you know that they used to do nude car washes?
Nude car washes, yeah.
To help finance for some of these tours?
Yeah, I read that. I was laughing so hard. I'm like, yeah, I didn't go to those extremes, but I get it.
It's like, Josh, you've washed your car 6 times in a week, man.
Dude, we're let's talk about the music videos a little bit. They pile all those girls into the back of that van, just go park somewhere and open the doors and just have them all run out, kind of thing. Like, how did they get that all set up? It would have been hilarious, but yeah, no. If continuing on in the Sea Sleeps in Flame, it has, in my opinion, the best songs that they made, right? But right after that, the second song on the album is The Only Medicine. And The Only Medicine is probably their heaviest song that they've put out. And it's just a banger, right? Heavy breakdowns, heavy synth again, all the good stuff that you're looking for. It's just solid.
What I like about the mixing of this album is I don't feel like any of the parts kind of like overshadowed any of the other parts. Some of these bands with synthesizers or keyboards or things like that can either be too much or too little. And I guess it goes back to the guy that produced it, but the synth was there, the front runner when it needed to be, and it was in the background when it needed to be. And it was a really good job of not like shoving any of that in your face. It felt really well mixed and really well organized.
Kind of going back on the whole synth thing, I think the only other band that really did synth around that time was actually Under Oath, but they just weren't known for their synth. You don't really think about it too much because
it wasn't the synth sound.
You didn't listen to it for the synth.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you'd be listening like, what is that noise? And you're like, oh yeah, I forgot they have a piano player. It's wild,
Yeah. I think that was the biggest thing, was seeing him live was kind of their calling card, right? That guy would go nuts. But you're right.
Poyon's legit. And we're going to talk about Poyon.
And I mean, it's a great album. And honest, you're right. Anyone that wants to get into Scary Kids or wants to reminisce, that's the album to go back to, for sure.
For sure. And we're going to hit on My Darkest Hour, so we're going to move past it for right now. But onto the self-titled. This is where they start to lose me a little bit. It's got good songs. It has the Scary Kids feel, the Scary Kids vibe, but I don't feel like it changed enough, right? In albums, you typically are looking for growth. You're looking for something different. You're looking for some way to continue this progression. And I felt like it was a little bit trying to repeat, and then also following the 2007 formula of having kind of that Southern riff song, a couple heavy songs, a piano song on there, a ballad basically. And it didn't hit me the same. There's definitely songs I like, and it's a fine album, but it wasn't, in my opinion, the best.
Like I will say that I think the album flows better. You can tell that it's been produced, I guess, in a more careful way than their first album. The sound quality in it's better. They actually have like legit intros and outros and things like that. But the guy that produced this one, he had worked on Dashboard Confessionals, Good Charlotte, Linkin Park, Don Gilmore, that was his name. It's interesting, and maybe I'm not into the like music in this part of it enough, but I mean, how much does changing a producer affect that, do you think? Is it something though that we should commend to say, hey, you kept your sound moving to a different producer, or should they have maybe leaned more on a different producer to kind of stretch themselves?
I mean, this is kind of not jumping ahead, but they signed on to a major label right before they disbanded. So like that was the direction they were heading. So I'm sure the 2008 record, their self-titled, was like, let's see how it goes. I think changing producers makes a huge difference. I mean, when you look at, who did you say, Dashboard, and who else?
Dashboard, Good Charlotte, Linkin Park.
Good Charlotte, Linkin Park. Okay, so all perfect examples of bands where they're very structured, and intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. That's what's been popular for decades. Every song you hear on the radio, that's what it is. Scary Kids was not that structure. So when you take a structure that structured everything like that and tried to put it in that, to me it sounded like a bunch of botched ideas that never made it to The City Sleeps in Flames. I mean, when you listen to Faces, it like starts out pretty good and then it changes key.
Yeah.
And it like throws me off and I'm like, it's not that it's bad, but I'm like, you could have.
You're right. I mean, yeah, the chorus doesn't fit the rest of that song at all.
It's pop. It's pop.
And then it goes right back to the intro. You know what I mean? It's very repetitive. And you're like, I really like Scary Kids for the branching out and like not doing that.
Yeah. And I'll say, like Josh just said, as a producer, right? He produced the guys who were on the radio. You want to talk about a Good Charlotte, a Linkin Park, a Dashboard. Maybe their entire goal was to get airtime. Maybe Faces was that attempt at getting some airtime. And I'm more in line with Josh. I just don't think it hit very well. And, you said that you felt the flow was good. I felt like the flow was off. I think my favorite song on the album, and I know that Josh disagreed with this, but was Snake Devil. You can line out all the Southern songs that came out 2007, 2008, and I would put those on repeat. I love those. But the next song after that, it's a piano song. It just came off so wrong. You go from this, what was like a Blessed by a Broken Heart type of song into a piano ballad. And I'm pretty sure Craig Owens from Chiodos is on that, but it just didn't fit, in my opinion. It just wasn't put in the right order, I don't feel like.
No, I agree with that. A lot of the heavier parts of that album are heavier than anything that was on The City Sleeps in Flames, right? The softer stuff that was on that album, way softer than anything on The City Sleeps in Flames. Yeah, it's like they almost didn't really know what they wanted to do with it, and they were just like, let's just throw all of it in. The one positive that I took from this album, though, that I think is missed nowadays is there's 15 songs on it. Mm-hmm. When was the last time you guys listened to a 15-song album?
It's the formula is 10 to 12.
I'm like 5.
Yeah, no, seriously, it's like I feel like more and more bands nowadays are like, well, we're just going to drop 3 EPs in 1 year, and we're not going to do.
I'm pretty sure Avenged just said that. I'm pretty sure Avenged just said we're not putting out a full album anymore. It'll be singles and 3 album.
I don't like that.
Dude, so like, it's funny. Well, in the amount of albums that have been released in the last couple of years, I can only think of maybe 2 or 3 that I've listened to all the way through. I'll give you an example. So like when my band recorded their last record, we did a full length, and I expressed it was a terrible idea, But I'm like, nobody listens to full lengths anymore.
Yeah.
Most albums have 3 or 4 good songs, like straight bangers that you want to hear played live. And then you have kind of the one that's okay, and then a different one. And it's for the amount of money and time that goes into it, I'd rather just write, 5, 6 solid songs, release them, play them, and then we'll move on.
Yep. I love 5 to 6 song albums that are just solid front to back. Giving 20 minutes, you can put it on pretty much anytime you're in the car, and it's just solid. That's, in my opinion, I love how that gets structured.
I might disagree with that, though, because you go back and listen to some of these artists, and it's like most people just hit what's the top 10 songs on Spotify, right? And we're missing good bangers on a lot of these albums that don't get credit.
You give me 5 to 6 good songs and then put 5 to 6 more out the next year just because you didn't have to put all 12 on this album kind of thing, and then wait 3 years to write more. I'd be more interested in listening to 5 to 6 every year than 12 every other year kind of thing. So
I might last thing I'll say on that, I might disagree with that, especially because there's so much music out there that it's like, give me a 15-song album. Let me binge this band, let me just absorb them for 2 months, and then let me move on to the next one. Right. And then give me a break, because there's so much music. So that's just me personally. Right. I get what you're saying. So, but I thought it was interesting. I don't see a lot of 15-song albums anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe that was part of extra songs that they were just we're just going to put it on there. Maybe that's part of the problem with the album too.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, when you look at Good Charlotte and Linkin Park, they're, putting 14.
Yeah.
These
So again, maybe producer. maybe that's what he said. Maybe they came in with 12 and he said, I need 3 more. You never know.
Yeah, record labels are weird, man. Sometimes it's like you're going to sign on for 10 records. You're going to do this producer, and these are your timelines.
Yeah.
Or, you don't get your $1 million, and you're like, yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
Uncle Sam.
It's
I'm
super
ready.
interesting. So last album they've put out, so obviously there was the single for the vocalist, but last album is Out of Light. This one, I don't know, it's fine. It's very generic in my opinion to today's music. And the one thing that is interesting is the guest vocalist for every single song instead of just having one. I did like that. I felt like each song is unique and can almost be independent, and you could put them on different playlists and stuff like that, just depending on what you wanted to listen to. So I did like that aspect of it. But overall, I feel like it's a very generic release for this genre. And kind of the high points for me, you touched on it, Endlessly Yours, Black Hole, the vocalist, that Donovan Melorero or whatever his name is. He's currently on Equal Vision as a solo artist, legit. And then you guys might laugh at me for this one, but Knock It All Down with Lil Lotus, the emo rapper. Let's go.
Yeah. No, I agree. If you take this album and don't put a Scary Kids name on it, like music talent wise, like you were saying, it's awesome that they're talented enough that they could write. I don't remember how many songs are on the album, but that many unique sounding songs, right? They're not songs that I would generally like listen to, but I can respect the musical talent that they're able to, with a different vocalist, every song have something sound unique. And I respect that. That's pretty cool.
I liked Omens.
Yeah.
With Spencer Chamberlain. It's cool to hear him kind of express his vocals in that, just because you haven't heard him really do anything like that since he was in Sleepwalker.
Yeah.
You ever listen to them?
Under those new albums, though, he has a lot more clean stuff. So
yeah, just that general direction. If he were, if they were to take him, that'd be like kind of what they would sound like. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
What's actually funny is I actually really like the song "Knock It All Down."
Yeah.
This is kind of funny. So the Little Lotus, he's known as the SoundCloud rapper guy or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's actually in a band called If I Die First. And it actually has the same drummer that drums from First to Last and Downpresser.
Okay.
Nice.
So kind of interesting there. The drummer for Downpresser was actually the drummer from First to Last, the original lineup. Now he's in If I Die First. But I like the stuff that Little Lotus has done. But yeah, it's definitely not a Scary Kids album. Like I'll say that straight up, but I like the direction that they're going versus the last big release that they did, in 2008. I'll take this over that any day. I thought it was cool. The release they did in 2019, their one-off for Tyson Stevens.
Yeah.
Kind of doing some research on that. I said that it was their member Chad. I can't remember his last name. He wrote that song a couple years prior to releasing that. And it was basically just his way to express emotions, how he was feeling, whatever. I mean, you could go through and read all the lyrics and listen to them, and like they're pretty straightforward, just kind of like, I miss you. We listen to your lyrics every day, things like that.
Well, what was really cool is they have the lyrics from their songs. They have like the names of the titles. He specifically says something about the city sleeping in flames, their darkest hours. Like they go through their discography at the end of that song and specifically quote lyrics that he's written, which was, is awesome, right? It paid tribute, respect to what he had done for the band. Okay, cool. Well, so that's all 4 albums. What are kind of your first memories of Scary Kids? We're getting a little bit low on time, so we'll kind of get through this and we'll talk about the tours and stuff. But what are just some of those first memories? Because I said we'll touch on this later. Freaking My Darkest Hour music video. That was a key, I feel like, to our high school and what we did. We were often driving around, rocking out, and feed out windows and all sorts of stuff. And you talk about Poyon, the keyboardist, being like crazy up on stage. When that song starts and he turns and he looks at the camera with that look on his face and just starts bobbing his head, it gets into it. It just sets the tone and it is awesome.
Again, that's why I'm telling you, I don't believe anyone that says that My Darkest Hour was not their intro to Scary Kids, because the music video is perfect. The music video like perfectly encompasses all of like the 2005 to 2007 post-hardcore vibes, right? I mean, that's just what it was, you know. That music video, I think, is what turned me on to them. But what made me really appreciate them is that tour with Haste Today. So seeing them live and seeing My Darkest Hour, that album, the songs off that played live, that's like my earliest memories. And honestly, that's one of the shows that like really pushed me like deep into this scene. That was back in like 2005 too, and had to get my mom to drop us off, and all the first time seeing like a pretty heavy band in Haste Today, and that's kind of my first memories. And seeing them play that show was it. It was awesome.
You know, I might be wrong about this, but I also think that was the last tour that Haste Today had that first vocalist.
That's the When Everything Falls album, right?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that was the only time I saw him. And like you said, you want to talk about coming into a heavy band at that time when we're coming from Senses Fell, Scary Kids, bands like that. Haste Today hit hard, you know, just in the scene at that time.
Yeah, I remember cutting my head open at that show, jumping off stage. So my mom getting pissed, picking me up, and I'm holding the towel across my head.
You know, Scary Kids played that tour in 2006 with It Dies Today, Aiden, and Silverstein. And it's funny, is like, I remember It Dies Today playing because they had their first vocalist, and I remember Silverstein playing, and I like vaguely remember Scary Kids playing now that I see them on that roster. But you know, that was in the old Avalon venue, you know, before they put all the benches in. And so I just remember the entire floor. Maybe that's why I don't remember the banks. You're focused on not dying. The whole floor was at a slope because it was old movie theater. So like the mosh pit would move down towards the stage. Well, you were literally just going down the hill, you know, and you were trying to fight to get back up.
It was that like really slick, like movie theater linoleum floor, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it got wet at all. Y'all were doomed. You know, but I think the most that I remember them on was when it was one of the last times Seosin came through with Cove. This would have been at Murray Theater. But one of the things I think I remember the most about their vocalist, Tyson, was he always like held his mic and then he would sing, but he'd just do this like, and like bring it back like all the time. I'm like, what are you doing? You know, but like it kind of went with like how he did his vocals on the record, and I'm sure that plays a lot into it. And the piano player, like I think I've seen that. I don't know how the piano still worked because it was usually like on the ground, unplugged, broken in half,
swinging his hair around,
you know, doing handstands, falling over, and I'm like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know?
So I remember the Silverstein It Dies Today show too, but I remember Aiden. And the reason I remember Aiden is for some reason, I don't know why people do this, but the bass player smashed his bass at the end of the show in Avalon Theater. There's like 200 of us in there packed, right? It was a full show, but he threw the neck. I caught the neck and like everyone's kind of fighting for it. And then out of nowhere, this little girl reaches her hand up and just grabs one end of it. And everyone around was like, it's the girls. It doesn't matter who got it. It's the girls. And so it was just like turning it over. But no, it was Scary Kids was always fun. Scary Kids always put on a good show.
They had some pretty. So it's interesting looking at some of the tours they did, and I guess how they changed. And again, maybe this all ties back to like producer changes, or maybe their end goal was changing as well. You know, before they stopped. But like, you look at some of their tours, like 2005, you've got Haste Today, Scary Kids, Halifax, Bedlight for Blue Eyes, Ecstatic Lullaby. You know, that's, you know, pretty good post-hardcore, like some metalcore thrown in there. 2006, you got Silverstein, The Stick Up, Aiden, Scary Kids, It Dies Today. A good mix of like metalcore, post-hardcore. Chiodos, Emery, Scary Kids, The Devil Wears Prada, and Underminded. But then you start going into like 2008, and it's like Anne Berlin, Stray Light Run, There for Tomorrow. Another tour in 2008. It's like Finch, Tickle Me Pink, Foxy Shazam, and Embers Rise. So it's like, I mean, you know, a couple of years there, they changed a lot, even from who they toured with. And
it would have been interesting to see what album was released after the self-titled, had they actually gone through with it. RCA is who they had signed with, right?
Yeah, so it shows that they were on Immortal, and then they announced on that Amberlin tour that they had just signed to a major label, which was RCA, and they were going to be writing their full length, but then they disbanded before they recorded anything.
Yeah.
So their direction, it would have been super interesting to see which way they landed. Obviously, the previous producer, like we talked about, being more or less a radio producer and stuff like that, kind of had set them down that path. It felt like.
I mean, I'm not against it all, like mixed bill tours and stuff. Like I think that's cool, but I don't know. You just talking about these guys and kind of seeing how their music changed and their album changed, and people might like it, people might not like it, and that's cool. But it's interesting to see the different path they took, and musically, and bands they're hanging out with, people they're hanging out with. So
I'd be curious too, like not necessarily who wanted to tour with Scaring Kids, but what were those other bands doing at that time? Because I mean, Haste Today didn't really tour anymore. Like,
yeah, they slowed down.
And Chiodos, they had all kind of started to split and do their own projects, and Emery disappeared.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, like 2008, I feel like the scene kind of softened up a little bit too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
yeah.
Well, and there were like newer, heavier bands coming in, like the Ghost Inside, Bring Me the Horizon, that August Burns Red would have rather toured with.
Sure. They came with heavy bands. I think that's what changed. We went from mixed bills to metalcore bands playing with metalcore bands.
That's a good point.
So, okay, couple quick questions and we'll wrap this up here. So, if you're introducing someone to music from 2003 to 2008, do you put Scary Kids on the list?
What era are you talking? 2003?
2003 to 2008. So those are the years they're active, right? Those are their album years.
I think it would be written on a roster or like sent in a text message, but it definitely wouldn't be my first. But I think it would definitely fall in, because I mean, Scary Kids for me wasn't like my go-to. I think it was probably fourth or fifth band in, then I was like, oh, sick,
Yeah.
But, if it was like for fans of, if you like this, you're definitely going to like this. It's a killer record.
I think there's too many good bands, like too many bands that like genre defining at that time, especially even when you look at like post-hardcore, where I would kind of consider them. I think there's more, if I'm introducing someone brand new to it, I think there's more genre defining bands to talk about, but it also depends a lot on who I'm talking to. So
sure.
Because if it's someone that's not like really pushing heavy music, that's really interested in that, then yeah, I think Scary Kids is a really good medium.
And I think I'm right there with you guys. I think that they fall on the list at this point in time, just knowing what we know in the scene these days and who's around today and everything. But if someone just asked me what's a good, heavy post-hardcore song, I'm going to put on The City Sleeps in Flames for them. You know what I mean? I think it's a solid entry into it. I think it's a solid release for the genre and everything like that. And it kind of encompasses what was going on at that time. So I think that they have the songs for it, but I'm with you. I don't think that they're like the band you're like, hey, you need to go listen to them.
Which kind of sucks at the same time though, right? Because earlier in the podcast, we were talking about how being 18 and writing those lyrics, being out of high school and doing things like a synthesizer the right way, going on these crazy cool tours and kind of exploding, like, and maybe the reason why we can't do that is because it was cut short, maybe. I mean, only 2 full-length albums, really. I mean, the last one doesn't really count because it's not with the original singer, but maybe you can't say that because they don't have this like rich, full discography and history as some of these other bands do. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think my introduction, I just put on 7 years, and if you don't like that song, we're not friends anymore.
That's true.
We just end the conversation there.
So, all right, hey, top, really quick, just top album and maybe your top song. I know they have a smaller catalog, so is there kind of the things that stick out?
I've said it over and over again tonight. City Sleeps in Flame album, obviously number 1, and My Darkest Hour. Has to be.
I'd say The City Sleeps in Flames. Might be a little biased because I haven't really done too much in their new album, although like a lot of their songs like I really, really do like. But I think as far as song, I like What's Up Now.
Okay. Yeah, that's sick. And then obviously City Sleeps in Flames. It it was their crown jewel. But I'm going to switch it up on you. Darkest Hour definitely is the funnest song, but I think City Sleeps in Flames song, it's just a solid release. So sick. Well, if you want to catch Scary Kids, they're actually playing So What this weekend, which by the time this comes out, probably past. But they also have one more show in San Antonio. And then they got put on the bill for the California is Lovers show, which is Hawthorne Heights' kind of traveling tour that they put on. That show looks sick. California and Lovers in August has Alkaline Trio, Sleeping with Sirens, Bayside, Thursday, Atreyu, Hawthorne, Norma Jean, Emery, Red Jumpsuit, Further Seems Forever, and Scary Kids. Like, you want to go to some throwback? That's a sick throwback show. Always good to talk about one of these bands. Really enjoyed Scary Kids. I'd still listen to them. Any last thoughts from you guys?
No, I'm glad we did this. It's always fun going back, listen to some of these bands that, you know, that we rocked out to back in the day. So anyone wants to comment or have questions, you can hit us up at Pit Therapy on all the social media. So let us know what you think.
Sick.
Yeah, if you're ever interested in what Tyson Stevens actually was doing right after Scaring Kids, he was in a band called Coma Prevail.
Oh, sick.
You have to find it on YouTube. You're gonna have to do some boomer crap, dude.
You have to go to like the dark web, the dark web of YouTube to find this stuff.
It's really good though. It's really good. So, but yeah, no, it's been fun.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you for the session next week. Peace.